My son, keep your father's commandments, and do not forsake the Torah of your mother. Bind them to your heart forever, tie them around your neck.
Shabbat Shalom, you all. And this is the final message on this little series, When Will the Great Tribulation Begin? I have found out that sometimes when you go down a rabbit hole, you find a snake. And I'll tell you exactly, that's what I have found when I've been researching these sermons. That serpent is Satan, the deceiver, who comes to kill and steal and destroy. Last Sabbath, we were looking at the all-pervasive influence of Freemasonry within our government, our judiciary. President Trump openly displays a Masonic sign, the Sacred Feminine, it's called. Trump Tower is awash in Freemasonry symbolism. So is Freemasonry just some kind of an alternative club? Is it just a place where good old boys go to get away from their wives? No. There's a very specific agenda that Freemasonry has. And it culminates with this here, what I'm going to show you. Now, this is a Latin phrase, ordo ab chao, order out of chaos. That phrase is extremely important within Freemasonry. It is known by Masons as the motto of the 33rd degree. For Masons, as chaos comes, old orders are broken down to allow new ones to emerge and to replace them. Masons have made this their motto, order out of chaos. And they compare it to that symbol there at the top, the yin-yang. It's a Chinese philosophy that reflects the concept of dualism, two seemingly opposite or contrary forces that are interconnected and cannot exist without one another. And that whole concept, according to Chinese philosophy, applies to everything in life. Light and darkness, and masculine and feminine energies, and anything else where there are opposites. However, when you use Yahweh's spiritual discernment and you compare this philosophy and the Masonic philosophy to the Bible, you see very clearly it is false. It's wrong. There's absolutely no question about it. Now, yes, as long as Satan has his hand in anything, there will be light and darkness. There will be righteousness and sin. But all of that duality is going to break down and go away. First of all, it will start to break down in the 1,000-year millennial reign of Yeshua. There still will be sin, and sin will be judged during that 1,000-year reign. And then after Yeshua turns it over to the Father at the end of the 1,000 years, and the great white throne judgment occurs, there will be no sin after that point in time. All death will go away. All of those things will disappear. Praise Yahweh for that. But these 7,000 years, counting the millennial kingdom of the earth's existence, are not an experiment, but they are a time where Yahweh gets glory with us submitting our free will to Him and living righteously, living obediently in these desperate times where we are. We are facing some very hard times in the near future, and I mean very near future. You're going to see some things here as I preach this today, I think that probably will be surprising for some of you. Last week, one of the things we looked at were the Knights Templar. The Knights Templar were an organization back in the 1100s, and they were established back then for the purpose, supposedly, of protecting pilgrims that were on annual pilgrimages to Jerusalem. The Roman Catholic Church was promoting that, and so the Knights Templar were protecting them from bandits and such on the way. And then you've heard of the Crusades and such. Those, and of course the 1100s was probably toward the tail end of the Crusades, but the Knights Templar were established for that. But the King of France and two of the Roman Catholic popes actually disbanded the Knights Templar, put them in prison, and even executed many of them. Why? Because they found out that the Knights Templar were worshiping that creature that's on the right-hand side, Baphomet. Baphomet is a bisexual, if you want to put it that way, or a transsexual god. Has women's breasts, and yet it's a male, and it is exemplifying there by pointing, it's got two fingers pointing up like this and two fingers pointing down, indicating the same thing as the yin-yang did and the dualism that they preach. The Roman Catholic Church disbanded and imprisoned members of the Knights Templar because of homosexuality and worshiping a transgender pagan god, Baphomet. Then the Freemasons stated that they were, quote, impressed by the Templars' wealth of knowledge and their dedication to spiritual principles, so they incorporated many of their teachings into Freemasonry. One of the degrees, by the way, of Freemasonry is actually called Knights of the Templar. Interesting. And these Templar teachings included the veneration of the sacred feminine. The Knights Templar played a significant role in shaping Freemasonry. Last Sabbath, I posed the question, well, why would the Masons welcome ties with an organization that was involved with homosexuality and transgender God worship? Now, you tell me. I don't know. I have an idea. There's another rabbit trail I went down. In my investigation of Freemasonry and about this whole issue of transsexuals and such, I discovered this about the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Now that'll make you blink. I discovered that officially Seventh-day Adventists discouraged their members from joining the Masons. But here are a couple of troubling things. First of all, excuse me, this is a painting that is on the wall in the headquarters of Seventh-day, wherever that is in Seventh-day Adventists. And this is back in 2013. I don't know if that painting is still there or not. But you see there the eye, the all-seeing eye, that the arrow is pointing to. Why would the Seventh-day Adventist Church adopt the famous and obvious Masonic symbol, the all-seeing eye? Why use a symbol from a known satanic organization? You tell me. Also found this out. I get to it here. Now this is from Seventh-day Adventist website. What kind of impression does that give you right off the bat? It's an established fact, and I found this out on the website. I heard it with my own ears first of all, and then I researched it. It's an established fact that Seventh-day Adventist hospitals perform abortions. That's a fact. They started doing that in 2015. And they also provide hormone therapy for gender transitioning. And they also legalized homosexuality within their corporate temples. Now, I'll clarify that. They legalized those who identify as homosexual. But supposedly, they're no longer practicing homosexuals. They just call themselves homosexuals still. Now, does that kind of make you go, why? Now, just don't make an emotion. I'm going to say, all of you that have been drunkards, raise your hand. No. All of you that have been fornicators, raise your hand. No. I've washed from that. I'm clean from any of those things. I don't claim any of those. Anything that's in my past is under the blood of Yeshua. I confess those things if I was that way. Why would I call myself a homosexual if I'm supposedly not a homosexual? They've even started a support group called Coming Out something or other. I can't remember the last word on it, within Seventh-day Adventists. If a person has left homosexuality, they may give testimony about that, thanking and saying, Yahweh saved me from that. Some people say, Yahweh saved me from being a drunk. Some people say, Yahweh saved me from being a transsexual or whatever. But it's not something you glory in. It's not a label you want emblazoned across your back. I am a homosexual, or I am a fornicator, or whatever. I mean, Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians 6:11, such were some of you. That's past tense. And he uses that for someone to say, I am a homosexual or transgender, is attempting to glorify their sinful position. There are many sins that you and I could identify with, are there not? But thank Yahweh, we've been cleansed and sanctified. We no longer identify with those sins. We've put them aside and under the blood of Yeshua. It's profitless to speak of them. Yahweh told Cain, sin lieth at the door. We are not to allow those temptations to be a part of our lives. People talk about, I've read this. When I was researching this, I read this a lot of times that, the people that were involved in homosexuality hate themselves. That's not the answer to deal with sin. We're to hate the sin, not to hate ourselves. Anyone that's been a past fornicator or a past adulterer or a past drug addict or a past drunkard or any sin, you hate the sin. You don't hate yourself. Hating yourself is not a Bible way to deal with things. It says in James chapter 1, every man is tempted when he's drawn away of his own lust and enticed. So we have to hate the sin and submit therefore to Yahweh, but resist the devil and he will flee from you. Attendance at a church that agrees with those positions is putting your stamp of approval on it. Come out of her, my people. Religion is always referred to as a her in Scripture, always. So it's not talking about the world system, it's talking about the religious system of the world, whatever those things are. Okay, back to our review about what we went over last Sabbath. That was a mouthful right there, wasn't it? Freemasonry will defend and enforce their ideals and values to the hilt. It's what they define and consider sacred that they will enforce. Are those biblical values? No, not in the least. Remember what Albert Pike wrote in his Masonic book, Morals and Dogma? I'll get to it here. He said this, Lucifer, the light bearer, strange and mysterious name to give to the spirit of darkness, Lucifer, the son of the morning. Is it he who bears the light and with its splendors, intolerable blinds, feeble, sensual, or selfish souls? Doubt it not. He's saying that Lucifer blinds feeble and senseless souls, people that stick their head in the sand and refuse to see the truth that I am preaching to you today. And he's directly attributing it to Lucifer, his God. You know, we understand that Lucifer has come to steal and kill and destroy, do we not? He also comes to lie. He is the great liar, the deceiver. He's the God of Freemasonry. And anyone who attempts to say otherwise is either truly ignorant or they are a liar themselves. The top 4 degrees of Freemasonry know the truth about it, and they lie. They lie to the lower degrees of Freemasonry. Who would want to join Freemasonry if they really knew Lucifer was the God? Who would want to do that? Very few. So they lie to those that are in the lower degrees to entice them. They talk about doing good and the brotherhood of man and being kind to people, and those are all very good things. But that's not the goal of Freemasonry. They hide the truth about Lucifer being their God until someone reaches those upper degrees. At some point in the near future, the Antichrist, along with Freemasonry, is going to enforce worldwide worship of their God, Lucifer. That will be happening. It will be enforced through the mark of the beast. Last week, we also briefly looked at the book called The Fourth Turning. The Fourth Turning. The men that had written that book that was released back in 1997 discovered that Western society goes through cycles, 4 different cycles, about every 20 years. And the last cycle is called the 4th cycle. And that's a time when there's chaos and then a major revamping of values. And they said that the 4th turning here in the United States and for the world would actually begin this year, 2025. That's surprising. It's ironic that their predicted date of 2025 follows the previous 4 years of the greatest social upheaval that I think our country has known. The previous administration brought a lot of chaos, did they not? A lot of upheaval. And so now they're saying, remember that Latin saying, order out of chaos? That's what their goal is. They want to bring order out of chaos. Conservative citizens, abortion protesters, conservative politicians have been imprisoned just for being conservative or being Christian. President Trump was even taken to court multiple times. Now, those are very significant events. I'm not defending that last statement I made. It's just a fact. The 4th turning, in that book, The 4th Turning, the authors believed that, now this is interesting here, they believe that an unexpected national leader who will emerge during this current 4th turning from an older generation and will lead the globe into a new world order, which they envision developing by 2025. This commander, they call him that, this commander, whom they refer to as the Gray Champion, would come to power as a result of the nation losing faith in existing government and desperate for a political savior to arrive and calm the nerves by offering to bring about a golden age and what amounts to welfare for the masses. We've heard that phrase, a golden age, have we not? President Trump uses it repeatedly. Just last week, he promoted in Congress the big, beautiful bill. I'm sure some of you that if you followed the news, you know what I'm talking about, where he plans to reduce many taxes. He plans to eliminate the IRS eventually. Now, that's not in the bill, but he does plan these things that I'm going to say. He plans to eliminate the IRS, return to the gold standard, increase benefits to senior citizens, and do many other things that really resonate and appeal to American citizens. He does genuinely want to initiate the golden age, not only for America, but for the entire world. He has stated that. Many Christians have lauded him as a savior. Trump can do no wrong. He's the hero. He is almost at the God level. He was elected in a landslide, and he mostly currently has high favorability ratings. He has repeatedly said, I am the chosen one. I am the chosen one. But in spite of George Soros and Barack Obama and the Bilderbergers and the Illuminati and all the people of that ilk, they've not gone away. Those people have not gone away. What are they waiting for? They're waiting for the same thing. I'll get to it in just a minute. Last week we saw the Masonic symbolism in the Great Seal of America. The pyramid with the all-seeing eye at the top of the pyramid. This inside actually another smaller pyramid. The Great Seal of the United States was actually designed by Masons. If a person were to, let's just say the world was going to continue on for another 500, 1,000, or 2,000 years. And let's just say, how archaeology works. Let's say that people down the road 2,000, 3,000 years from now were to do some archaeological digs about things and they were to see that Great Seal. What do you think their opinion would be of the country that had that Great Seal as its symbol? Did they worship Yahweh, God the Creator? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They would think that the people that had that country that had that seal as their symbol were worshiping some kind of a pagan deity. They would think that. So Osiris is the dominant theme and the god of the Egyptians symbols, his resurrection and return. And the Great Seal of the United States points directly to Apollo, the destroyer. Apollo the destroyer is the Greek version of Osiris, who is also closely related to Freemasonry. Every presidential inauguration on that day, several 33rd degree Masons gather together in the Masonic Lodge that is located 1 mile north of the Capitol building. And there they perform a very peculiar ceremony. It's called the Raising of Osiris. And that painting on the right-hand side shows the Egyptian version of that ceremony. Well, in Masonic symbolism, it relates to both Osiris and Apollo. And according to the world's foremost authorities, including United States official records and even Freemason scholars, Washington, D.C., all of Washington, D.C., was designed as a symbol of the Rosicrucian and the Masonic Lodge dream that they had that America would become the new Atlantis and eventually would lead the world into a restored golden age. Now, you can find these things easily, just like I did. I don't have any special knowledge or special insight into them. They're just things that I've put together from the research. They're there. This next picture, this is the Capitol Dome in the Capitol building. This is called the Rotunda. Under this Capitol Dome, that's an area, and this painting here is wider than this building is that we are in. 72 feet, just the painting, 72 feet long. Each figure is like 7 feet tall. All of those figures that you can see there, and you can't see them clearly, All of those figures are gods and goddesses from Greek and Egyptian, what they call mythology. And the circled area in the middle is George Washington, our first president. That's called the apotheosis of George Washington. The apotheosis just means raising someone to the level of being a god. And so the Masons, and there was another Mason that painted this, and it's been there in the Capitol building since the 1840s, I believe. And the Mason that painted this, he did this with the obvious approval of the Masonic Freemasonry. And he said that by painting this, that George Washington, and then every president subsequent to him, attains the level of being a god through apotheosis. The fresco, as it says there, it's 180 feet above the floor, covers over 4,600 square feet. And on the left-hand side of George is the goddess Liberty, called Liberty, and on the right is the one called Victory. Now, there's other pagan names for those gods or goddesses. Those are the Americanized names, okay? Under the Capitol building dome, where the presidents usually stand during inauguration, and where upon their death they lie in state for their spirit to rise into the apotheosis overhead to join George in the kingdom of Osiris. These are Masonic ideas. That's the purpose of the fresco. That painting openly hides the most alarming ancient magic, quote unquote, meant for the regeneration and raising of Apollo Osiris. What is it that's on the ceiling of President Trump's personal suite in Trump Tower? It's a painting of Apollo. What's above his fireplace in that same building? A painting of Apollo. It is a satanic imitation of the death and burial and resurrection of Jesus Christ that Tom Horn says, I believe, will play a role in the healing of Antichrist after he experiences a deadly head wound. It says in Revelation 13:3, and I saw one of his heads, as it were, slain to death, but his deadly wound was healed, and the whole earth was amazed and followed the beast. Tom Horn continues, the phrase that's on the Great Seal, Novus Ordo Seclorum, comes from the prophecies of the Cumaean Sibyl. That was the name. Sibyl was just the name given to the last name given, the prophetess of Apollo. That was about 500 years before Yeshua. And she predicted the return of Apollo at a future date when, quote, men would be rejoined by the gods. And that was from Virgil's Eclogue, number 4. It's a poem that prophesies the new golden age, marked by the birth of a miraculous child who will usher in an era of peace and prosperity. Who do you think that child is? It's the Antichrist. It's the Antichrist. And this god, Apollo, is specifically identified in the Bible as the spirit that will inhabit the Antichrist. The Great Seal of our country indicates an ancient prophecy of the coming man of sin. Now this is a painting, a Masonic painting, and this is Columbia. Okay, Washington, D.C. is called Washington, D.C., District of Columbia. Now, why did they use Columbia? What would be the purpose for that? Well, there is a very specific purpose. Columbia was a goddess, a pagan goddess, and she has been adopted by the United States. Do you realize, and I didn't know this until I researched it, we have the national anthem, what's called the Star-Spangled Banner. Before that, for the first 100 years of the existence of the United States, the national anthem was Hail Columbia. They attributed Hail Columbia, or Columbia, I should say. They said that Columbia was helping them to go from sea to shining sea. The Columbia was helping them to become a more perfect union. I'm borrowing phrases. Are you with me? I'm borrowing phrases from things that you and I may be familiar with in patriotism. If you've ever been patriotic, you know what I'm talking about. I was patriotic to the hilt at one point in my life. These things have been borrowed from paganism, taken directly from paganism. So this goddess Columbia, what is that at the top there in the circle? Hebrew letters. The sixth letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Wa, or Va. Repeated 6 times, 666. You get some symbolism there? This is a picture of the steps to Freemasonry. It's called the Steps to Freemasonry. And at the very top there, this is the 33rd degree Mason on the left, and this is the Order of the Knights Templar on the right. You see the link that's there, obviously. You can see that. It doesn't take a rocket scientist. The god Apollo is specifically identified in the Bible as the spirit that will inhabit Antichrist. And our seal, this great seal of the United States of America, indicates that there is an ancient prophecy with the coming man of sin. That's what the Antichrist is called, the man of sin. That prophecy foretold the coming of a new age that would be brought by a child who would restore the golden age. And that age would be marked by a return to justice. Whose kind of justice? A Bible justice or a Masonic interpretation of justice? It will be the latter. I promise you, it will be the latter. It will be the Masonic interpretation of justice. And there will be a new breed of man sent down from heaven, not from Yahweh's heaven, implicitly signifying a closer relationship between gods and humanity. That phrase that you heard me say a while ago, that men would be rejoined by gods, reflects that idea of a renewed connection between pagan gods, and has never gone away. You realize that Hillary Clinton regularly sacrifices to Baal? It is so sad that so-called Christians have interpreted that child that I just referred to a few minutes ago as a prophecy of Jesus Christ. The Bible says in 2 Thessalonians 2, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. In the Greek language, the word perdition is apolia, meaning destruction, ruin, loss. Apulia is a form of the name Apollo, the destroyer. It's the same root word. And by the way, Mr. Horn said this, for anyone that's a naysayer, I've been interviewed by United States congressmen and U.S. senators and even 33rd degree Masons, and none of them have attempted to refute my findings or conclusions. And that in itself should say a lot of things to you and I. There's one other person in the Bible called son of perdition. John 17:12, Joshua says, while I was with them, I was protecting them by your name that you have given me. I guarded them, and not one of them is lost except the son of perdition, so that the scriptures may be fulfilled. Judas Iscariot was the first son of perdition, and the coming Antichrist is also called the son of perdition. Judas walked with Yeshua for over 3 years, and he was a saved man. He's the only one that ever will be lost. Yeshua said, I guarded them, and not one is lost except the son of perdition. Judas cast out demons. He preached the gospel of the kingdom, but he was the son of perdition. Donald Trump claims to be a Christian. He gives credit to God for saving his life from the assassin's bullet last summer. Tom Horn, in his book Zeitgeist 2025, explains that the Masons believe that the winner of the 2024 presidential election will be their man. He will be the one who receives the raised, revived spirit of Osiris, Apollo. Their timetable says this will happen this fall, in 2025. They believe that the president will be assassinated and that his body will actually lie in state in the currently empty Washington tomb that's in the Capitol building rotunda under that painting that I showed you a while ago. And then several 33rd degree Masons will do their ritual in that Masonic lodge north of the Capitol building. And the spirit of Apollo and Osiris will go into that person that will be assassinated and bring him back to life. And then he will establish the golden era for the United States and the entire world. That is the Masonic agenda. And if all of that happens, if it all happens, it will prove that the POTUS is the Antichrist. It will undoubtedly, without any doubt, prove that, if it happens this fall. So again, the apotheosis of George Washington. Will it come true? Well, at this point, all we do know is that Yahweh's word is true, and every bit of it will be fulfilled. The Antichrist will reign during the Great Tribulation. Now remember that the asteroid Wormwood is scheduled, according to the vision that Tom Horn had, is scheduled to hit the earth on April the 13th, 2029. That's the third trumpet judgment, which happens toward the end of the Great Tribulation. Wormwood will hit almost exactly, except for 14 days, 3.5 years from the Feast of Tabernacles that begins this year, October the 6th. And those who believe in a pre-tribulation rapture, that's the last possible date for that. Last possible date for a great pre-tribulation rapture, because the Great Tribulation, if that's going to be happening, you will know, you and I will know, if the president is assassinated, that will be the beginning of the Great Tribulation. So the question is, will it begin this fall? Well, only if. If the president is assassinated this fall, then I assume the rest of the Masonic prophecy will fall into place, because it does correlate with biblical prophecy about the Antichrist and the Great Tribulation. I am not a prophet, but we have repeatedly heard of many threats on President Trump's life. Over the last 30 days, just at least 2 public threats were made, one of them by a former FBI director, and another by a college professor just last week. And the impression I get is that not much is really being done about it. It appears to be a setup. And I believe the last 4 years was a setup to make Americans sick of what was happening. There aren't very many Americans that aren't sick of what was happening, are there? And that set the stage for that landslide election of one whom many consider to be their Savior. Is he that? No, no. But many Christians are and will be deceived. The Antichrist will establish himself as Messiah, the Anointed One. I pray that this is a wake-up call to all the Christians that hear these words. The time for you and I to be obedient servants is now. Yahweh's servants will be sealed before the Great Tribulation begins, not after. If we want to be sealed, we are to be completely obedient to His commandments. That's in the New Testament and the Old Testament. Be a Berean. Until tomorrow, that's actually a high Sabbath tomorrow. Shavuot, Pentecost. Shabbat Shalom.